We've just seen where to find this create element method. Now, this is a really interesting lecture that we're going to go through, and it's very advanced. Not many people know how this all fits together. So consider yourself one of the lucky few. I hope you enjoy it and I hope you appreciate it. But let's continue. So we just saw that we can find this create element on this document object. And the key thing I want to point out is that it's not the same as the small d. This is a capital D, the document object. So what I want to do now is I want to compare the document to the document we all used to with the small d. What is the difference? And why is there this document? Well, let's look at this. We know we had to start by consoling the document out to the screen. We couldn't just console it directly because that gives us the HTML representation. And we've seen that the proto of this document is the HTML document. Oh man, what does this mean, this HTML document, and why does it have to be there, and how does it relate to the document? Well, let's console log the constructor function of this document. Let's have a look now. All I want to do now is I want to see what this constructor does. So let's access our window, our document on the window, and let's access this constructor function, constructor. If we return this, we can see that what's returned to us is this HTML document constructor function. This is very, very important. As we've seen, we can conclude that the document object is constructed from the HTML document constructor. So we can say part of the purpose of this HTML document object is to create that document for us. Makes sense, right? It's got to come from somewhere, and that's where it comes from. Okay, great. So now we've got our document that we're all used to using, but what is that document? Well, to find out, we can just console log its node type. So we access the window document node type. And as you'll find out, it console logs 9. And 9 is the code for the document node. We know that the HTML document constructor function creates the document. And we also know it's of type document node. Why is that relevant to us? Well, because the document is a document node object, we know it inherits from the document node. And yes, it's a capital D. It's not the same as our small d. This is the big D. And because it inherits from the document node, you could almost say that the document node is theoretically the root of the document. But it isn't really the root of the document in all practical purposes. Because the root of our web page is the first element node in the document, which is the HTML element. Let me show you this right now. Let's just switch to the console quickly. Alright, so we can see that kind of at the root of our entire system is this document node, but in all practicality, it's not really the root of our document. It should be the HTML document, and I'll show you why. Because we want to access the first element within this document node. So in order to do that, let's console dir our document out here. And of course, what we can do is we can open up this document. We can then scroll down to its proto, which is the HTML document. We can then scroll down to the document. And I just want to show you here, if we look at this first element child, what's in there? There we go. That's our HTML. This is in all practical purposes the root of our HTML document. So we're back here. This is where we left off. We know that the root of our page is in all practical purposes the HTML element. So we can say that the HTML element is the root or the top level element of our HTML document. And when this HTML file is loaded in our browser, we know that that constructor function kicks in and it becomes the document object. And document, capital D, is the ultimate node from which our document inherits from. P.S. Both document and the HTML document constructors are instantiated by the browser automatically when you load an HTML document. This is where they come from, in case you're wondering. And typically the use of these methods are associated with providing an HTML document to an iframe. But anyway, that's a bit advanced, but what we've learned in this lecture is incredibly advanced. you now know the difference between the small d document object that it ultimately inherits from this big D document node, and that in between you kind of have this HTML element node, and that kicks in with a constructor to build the document. So I know it can seem a bit confusing, but trust me, it is very advanced, and well done for getting this far. I hope you're learning a ton, but don't stop. I'll see you in the next lecture.